Just want to thank you all for having me here this morning. I want to thank Norman, who I just met, and Bernie, who was inspiring. And I certainly want to thank Jackie. She facilitated my visit here today. And Marion, who I've known for years, who is just a great person and is hosting me today. And I just think it's great. I feel so blessed and honored, really, to be speaking to you folks today. I kind of want to, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. Hope you'll bear with me. A lot of what I'm going to say is in a book that I just finished writing, coincidentally. I've been working on for some time. It's called Proving Ground, and what I'm going to say is much more completely and coherently reproduced there. And if you go to provinggroundbook.com, you'll see all about it. That's the end of the commercial. In the process of writing this book, I had to kind of research my own family history a little bit, and I learned some things that I didn't know. You know, we all have relatives, and they tell us a little bit about the family here and there, but until you pull it together, you really don't see what happened. My folks, like probably most of the black folks here, my parents are descended from slaves. And I didn't know about that whole history, and I'm not going to recount all of it here. But suffice it to say that my mother and father were in Albany, Georgia. My father was interested in electronics. He served in World War II in the Signal Corps, and he was actually stationed in the Aleutian Islands. And my mother went to nursing school in Atlanta at a place called the Grady Colored School of Nursing. And when she got her nursing degree, she went back to Atlanta, and my father, when he got out of the Army, went back to Albany, Georgia. And my father, when he got out of the Army, he went back to Albany. And my mother was working in this hospital one night, Phoebe Hospital, and it had a white side and a black side, as was common in those days. It was a nice brick building on the white side and a wood frame structure on the black side. And there was a corridor joining those two sides of the building. And there was a bathroom near the corridor. But it was a white bathroom. And the colored bathroom was all the way in the black section, the bowels of the hospital. My mother was working near that white bathroom one night, and she decided that she was going to just duck in there and use the bathroom real quick and come out, and one of her coworkers saw her and reported her to her superiors, and she was severely reprimanded. And that's when she decided, I'm getting the heck out of the South. I'm moving to Michigan. And so my father and mother moved to Flint, Michigan. And if they hadn't done that, my whole life probably would have been very different, because when they arrived in Flint, it was a boom town. Many of you know about Flint because of its recent history. Maybe some of you have seen Roger and Me, about how General Motors has abandoned Flint and how bad things are. But in the days when I was growing up in Flint in the 50s and 60s, it was an absolute boom town, one of the best places to live and grow up in the country. And not only that, but at the time, Jackie referred to Thurgood Marshall, the Brown versus Board of Education, and so forth. The civil rights movement was in full bloom at that time. And we were so full of optimism as kids growing up. We saw things changing, and our parents saw things changing. And in addition to that, it was a time of technological opening, because the transistor had been invented. Everybody was carrying around little transistor radios. The Russians had launched Sputnik in the late 50s, and so there was this fever in the United States about, we got to catch up. We can't let the Russians, beat us to space. We can't let the Russians beat us technologically. And so due to that, there was all this science education going on in the schools. And science fairs became very popular. I know some of you have probably participated in some of those science fairs. And that's really where my first introduction to technology came. Because when I was in the 4th grade, I had the idea for the best science fair project ever. It was a robot that if you shine a light on it, it would move. And, it used this newfangled thing called a photocell. And I just knew I was going to win the science fair. Well, I didn't even place. I mean, there was the top 50, and then the next 50, I was in the next 50. And I was beside myself. I couldn't figure out why couldn't I win this science fair with this great robot. And one of the judges stopped by when I was standing next to my robot crying, and all of my classmates were teasing me because I had told all of them I was going to win. One of the judges stopped by, and he said, "It's simple. You didn't use the scientific method. You've got to state a hypothesis. You've got to design an experiment to test the hypothesis, execute that experiment, and then produce the results." And because it was such a profound disappointment, that knowledge was seared on my brain. I really understood the scientific method from that point on, and I ended up using it for the rest of my career, practically using it for everything, every situation that I encountered. I would formulate a hypothesis, and I would say, okay. So it really didn't matter when I started to approach things that way, whether I achieved my objective or not, because as long as I understood why I didn't achieve the objective, I would learn something. Bernie talked about, why we celebrate Black History Month. Well, again, I looked at this business experience as an experiment, because in the time that we came along, I say we, I'm being presumptuous maybe about Bernie and Norman, but at the time we came along, all this stuff was new. I didn't see anybody starting a business in their basement, a technology business. I didn't see anybody black or white doing that, but I certainly didn't see any black folks doing that. And so when we started this business, one of the reasons we started was to see if we could. And so this book I wrote is my thesis, and I had to do it in a very methodical and detailed way. I tried to make it interesting, but the reason I wrote it was to let people know not only what's possible, but actually what happened in detail. Because so often, we see the end result. We see somebody who's been successful, and they're all dressed up nice, and they speak well and so forth, but you don't see all the stuff that happened behind the scenes. So I want to just take a few minutes, if I have a few minutes, and tell you some of the stuff that happened behind the scenes that resulted in the success that we had in business. So I went to a school called General Motors Institute for a couple of years. Left there because I couldn't see myself working at General Motors for the next umpteen years. I wanted to get into communications. So I went to University of Michigan, got a bachelor's degree, master's degree in electrical engineering, and I only wanted to work at one place. I wanted to work at AT&T Bell Labs, because that was the place you heard about when you're a student, or even before a transistor was invented there. We studied something in school called Shannon's channel capacity theorem, and Shannon was a researcher at Bell Labs. And you design Bode plots when you're in school. Bode was a Bell Labs person. So I just wanted to work for Bell Labs, and I tell young people today, because young people don't know anything about Bell Labs. They know about Google. So I say Bell Labs was Google, Microsoft, Sun Microsystems, everything rolled into one in those days. Bell Labs was the place to be. Well, fortunately, I had been planning to start a business for some time. I had always wanted to start a business since my college days. I used to tell people that my goal was to start a business, sell it at 40 years old, and then go study anthropology. And so I had different schemes and different business plans that I had worked on, even as I was working at Bell Labs. And somewhere along the line, I enticed two of my coworkers from my first group, two African-American guys. One was a Georgia Tech, Morehouse, Stanford grad, and the other guy was a University of South Carolina grad who got his master's in the OYOC program at Rutgers. I enticed both of these guys to come work with me, because we were walking to the cafeteria one day, and I didn't know quite how to say it to them, so I just blurted out. I said, I got an idea that it's going to make us all millionaires. And so when we got to lunch, they sat out and they listened intently. And I described this device that we could build, which was really a device for simulating the characteristics of the telephone network. and it was to be used to test modems and faxes and other kinds of communication devices. Well, when my second project got canceled and things just looked so uncertain at AT&T, I quit and started working full-time in the basement. And some of my coworkers asked, among themselves, did he go crazy? Did he have a nervous breakdown? Nobody ever leaves Bell Labs to go start a business in their basement. But for me, starting a business in those days was an extension of the civil rights struggle in my mind. I wanted to see if we could do it. Not just could I do it, but could we do it? And so even though it was an extremely difficult undertaking and very uncertain, I was determined to do it in those days. But I wasn't a very sophisticated business person. I was a decent engineer, but I gave an example of my lack of sophistication in business. I needed to get some money to start this business. So I took my prototype of this telephone network simulator. It was about that wide and about this big. I put it in the passenger seat of my Volkswagen Scirocco, and I drove over to a bank branch of just a local bank. I drove up to a drive-up window. And the clerk looked out, and she looked at, I could have had a car full of watermelons for all she knew. But she said, can I help you? I said, yes, I have my prototype here. I need some money to start a business. And she said, well, why don't you come inside? So I parked the car. First I said, should I bring my prototype with me? She said, no, that won't be necessary. So I parked the car. I went in, and there was a young guy who was the branch manager. And he said that all they do is home loans. They don't do business loans at this. It was a bank branch. It wasn't even a bank. So undaunted, I said, okay, I'm going to the source. I got in my car, I drove down to Washington, D.C. I went to the SBA headquarters because I had heard that the Small Business Administration was giving loans and especially wanted to give loans to minority companies. I go in, I meet somebody there. They look at me like I'm crazy. Why are you coming to SBA? But they gave me a few pamphlets, and they referred me to the Newark office, and they told me about something called a guaranteed loan program. Well, I took that to heart. I came back. I had this accountant who I met because when I registered my business, how people send you, solicitations. Well, I thought that he knew me and, he wanted to be my accountant. So I signed him up. He's my accountant. He said, I know somebody in North Jersey who can give you a loan under the SBA guaranteed loan program. I've done it before. He's done it before. He said, it'll be no problem. We get in his car. We go up to North Jersey. This guy, we walk in his office. He takes one look at me. His face scrunches up like that look that you get when people are not expecting you to be black. And it was a very short meeting. He hardly looked at me or talked to me. He talked to his accountant friend. On the way back down in the car, this guy said, Dave, I don't understand. This guy's done this a lot before. He told me it'd be no problem. But I understood what was going on. Well, at any rate, I took from that experience the knowledge that some bank would probably give me a loan. So I found a bank locally called Mid-Atlantic. They used to call themselves the Hungry Bankers. I don't think they exist anymore. But they gave me a loan for $150,000. It was prime plus 2. Prime rate was 11% in those days, so the loan was 13%. It was secured to my house and personal guarantees from me and my wife, who was also working at AT&T. So the bank had very little risk, but we really didn't care. I didn't care because I felt like if the business succeeded, I'd pay off the loan quickly, and if the business didn't succeed, it wasn't going to matter that we paid, such a high interest rate. Well, as I said, I was not very sophisticated. That first year, it was tough getting started. Our first few customers were at AT&T. We went back to our friends and said, here's the device you said you needed. It's better than anything out there. Will you buy it? We had a few people buy it. And But then we had to try to get beyond